Perfect. All right. So what are we going to cover here today, guys? So I was just in the midst of kind of the quick intro and welcome, pointing out a few interesting new members. Thanking you all for being here. What else are we going to cover today? So we've had a few questions from the group that I think are worth us covering in detail. And yes, this is being recorded, Lewis. So for any of you guys listening, this will be recorded and then released later. Probably tomorrow is when we'll share the upload. So don't worry about that. We've had a couple of questions from the group that we certainly want to cover around really kind of the underlying mechanics of how DevLake works. So Hezheng, who is Verico's CTO, and then of course lead maintainer and PPMC member of Apache DevLake. He's going to cover this in some detail, which I think will be very helpful for many of you. The next question we're going to jump into had a few of our kind of younger developers and our developers making their first open source contribution ask about kind of what the process looks like to kind of make and manage your first PR, first commits to a DevLake. Things that also be broadly applicable to other projects that you might get involved in. So that's going to be a really helpful way to kind of walk through this. Next, we're joined by Lewis. Lewis, thanks for joining us from China this evening. Lewis is the product lead for DevLake, one of my colleagues and a really fantastic collaborator. He's going to walk us through some of the dashboards, which I think will really help you to better understand how DevLake works in context, the value it can bring, and what it might look like to a really kind of power user, right? A power user, end user who's really kind of using DevLake to its maximum capability. And I'll also remind you, as you're looking at the dashboards, something to keep in mind, and something that every single person on this call is eligible for. We have launched our dashboard bounty program. So if you guys have any inspiration, any ideas for creating an interesting new dashboard of your own to perhaps address a specific issue or specific challenge, definitely send me a note, send me a DM on the Slack, and I'll be happy to answer questions about it. But that's a great opportunity for you guys to make really impactful contribution and also make some money in the process. So we'll make sure to discuss that. Last and not least, we're always excited to hear from our community members. And we have two of our community members today who are going to share a couple of cool updates. First, we've got Nikita, our friend in London, England. Nikita, I see you're active in the chat. Thanks as always for joining. Nikita is going to provide a quick update on one of the cool conferences that he recently attended, which I think should be really insightful. He found some good insights there. And Nikita has been doing a fantastic job of really engaging the community in England, and we're excited to collaborate with him more as we go forward. So Nikita, thanks so much. And then last and certainly not least, we have our friend Joshua. Joshua is based in India. He's on the AVL team, doing some really cool things to help open source move forward. And they had a product launch just last week. Time flies so quickly. And Joshua will be providing some of those updates. So I know I'm over time, so I'm going to pause here and we'll jump straight into Hezheng's content here. But thanks, guys, for joining. I think we've got a great agenda today. Hezheng's going to cover some awesome material, followed by Lewis and then Nikita and Joshua. I'm here in the chat. I'll be monitoring any questions. And then, of course, I'm always on Slack, so DM me if you have any thoughts or questions on this meeting today. I'll be excited to chat with you. So Hezheng, I'll pass the mic to you, and thanks for waking up early with us and being in action here.
Thank you, Maxim, for the awesome intro and welcome. So before we dive in how DevLake works, let's first thank our new contributors since last week. So we have two new contributors in the project. They are Prajwar Bokar and Kion Amini. So Their certificates should appear on our website, but right now we are experiencing some technical difficulty in pushing a new version of our website. So I'm just displaying their names here. Thank you, guys. And then also welcome our new friends to Slack. So we have 10 new members in Slack in the past 2 weeks. And then, yeah, great to have you guys in the community. So for how DevLake works, let's first get started with the user workflow. So for a user of DevLake, what would be the steps for you to take in order to harvest the value of DevLake? So there's a start zero, which is to install DevLake using Docker Compose or whatever option you prefer. And then the second step is to, well, the first step is to add the data source by configuring a data connection in our configuration interface. After you configure your data source, then you can run pipeline to collect data from your tool like GitLab or Jira or GitHub. And then you can head over to our Grafana to see the preview dashboards based on established proven metrics. Finally, if there are metrics that are already supported by our preview dashboard, you can customize your own analysis by writing SQL in Grafana. So this is roughly the user workflow of DevLake. So how does DevLake works behind the curtain for those who want to know more about internals? So this is an architecture overview. So a typical DevLake installation would consist of the following components. First of all, we have the config UI. So this is a handy user interface to create, trigger, and debug blueprints. So blueprint is a core concept in DevLake. It's basically containing all the information you need to run a data pipeline, including where to collect data from, what data to collect, for example, like which GitHub project, and how to collect this and transform this data. You can specify transformation rules for the data. And lastly, when to collect this data. Like you can set up a cron schedule for this data pipeline. So here I'm just showing a screenshot of our next version of config UI that Yumeng has demoed previously. So we are really excited to ship this in our v0.12 version, which is roughly in a month. Yeah. So the next component is the API server. So this is the main programmatic interface of DevLake. And this API server makes use of our runner module. The runner does all the heavy lifting for executing tasks. In the default DevLake installation, it runs just within the API server. But DevLake provides a temporal-based runner, which is in beta for production environment. The next component are the plugins. So these are where most of the magic happens. So plugins enable DevLake to collect and analyze data from any DevOps tools with an accessible API. DevLake community is actively adding plugins for popular DevOps tools, but if your preferred tool is not covered yet, feel free to open up a GitHub issue to let us know, or check out our doc on how to build a new plugin by yourself. Then comes the component database. So database stores both the DevLake's metadata and also the user data collected by our data pipelines. So DevLake right now supports MySQL and Postgres as of version v0.11, but we'll be adding more in the future. And lastly is our dashboards, which connect directly to our database. And right now, our official DevLake dashboard tool is Grafana, and all the preview dashboards are shipped in Grafana's JSON format. But users are welcome to swap for their own choice of dashboard tools if they want, as long as it can connect to DevLake's database. So these are the components in DevLake. As you can see, we basically take a modular design so that users can swap for their own choice if desired. So now let's go over, let's say you are a developer of DevLake. So if you want to develop a new plugin for DevLake, what are the steps that you will need to take? Well, what is the data workflow of DevLake? So here, this diagram illustrates roughly a typical data workflow for a plugin. And then we start with the data sources, right? That's where the data lives originally. And then first step, we call it the raw layer. So stores the API responses from the data sources in JSON. So this saves developers time if the raw data is to be transformed differently later on. So please note that communicating with data sources API is usually the most time-consuming step in the entire collection process. So in this raw layer, we cache the API responses so we can reuse later. In the second step, in writing a plugin, we extract the raw data in raw layer into a relational schema that can be queried by SQL. So each DevOps tool would have a schema that's tailored to their own data structure, hence the name, the tool layer. So for example, if we have we have two tables named raw Jira issues and raw GitHub issues in raw layer, and then these tables would become two Jira issues and two GitHub issues in two layer with their different schema. And finally, we have the domain layer, which provides domain abstraction across different tools. So the purpose to have domain layer is to build a layer of abstraction on top of the tool layer so that analytics tools can be reused across different data sources. For example, GitHub's pull request and GitLab's merge request are similar entities, or Jira's issues and GitHub issues are also similar entities. They each have their own table name and schema in the tool layer, but they are consolidated into a single entity in the domain layer. So the developers only need to implement metrics like cycle time or code review rounds only once against the domain layer schema. So this is roughly the data workflow, the data flow of a DevLake plugin. So these are the materials I prepared for how DevLake works for today, and hopefully answer some of our questions regarding, how to use DevLake, what are the components of DevLake, and what are the steps I need to take to implement the new plugin. Next, I'll briefly talk about how to make and manage your first PR. So for those who are new to open source, we're really honored to welcome you into the open source community. And hopefully we create a very good open source contributing experience for you guys. So here I'm just going to use one of my favorite blog posts to walk through the process of making your first PR. So I'm going to open up this link here. Okay, so can you guys see my Chrome?
Yeah, perfectly good.
Yes.
Awesome. So this is a really, really great walkthrough guide on how to make your first contribution to open source. It's on GitHub. It has 23.5 thousand stars. So see how popular it is. So the first step, so let me make it larger so everybody can read. The first step is to fork the repo you want to repository. In our case, and that is Apache/incubator-devlake. And then you can clone the repository onto your local laptop or development environment. And then you create a feature branch out of the main branch. So this is where you will make your changes, commit your changes, and eventually open the pull request with. So the next step is to make necessary changes and commit those changes. So this is just all the familiar Git operations for you guys. Next step is push changes to GitHub. So this is also just a single Git command, git push origin, and then your feature branch name. And then the next step is submit your changes for review. So here you will need to go to your forked repository, click on the compare and pull request button to create a new pull request. And in here, so this is where interesting things happen. So you need to select which base repository you are creating this fork against. So most of the time that will be Apache/incubator-devlake and the main branch. And then you should select your fork and then your feature branch to compare with the main branch. And then you fill out your pull request title and description, and that's it. So our team member should be able to pick up your pull request and then review it and get back to you, discuss what changes need to be made, and then go through the entire process. So that's roughly the process of how to make and manage your first pull request. And if you run into any questions, always feel free to ping us in Slack, and then we're happy to help.
This is awesome. Thanks, Hezheng. And a quick question, because I think some of our members are kind of new enough to the open source community that perhaps this would be a quick, interesting 2-minute sidebar. But what are some kind of common reasons that perhaps a PR might get rejected, or what are kind of common things, or even things specific to DevLake that might create bottlenecks that people can be thinking about and looking to avoid or account for?
That's a great question. So first of all, we do want to work really hard to get all the PRs accepted. We don't want to see any of our community efforts wasted. But sometimes here are some possible reasons that sometimes we might have to reject some PRs. First one, when the PR is not aligned with the project roadmap. But that's usually not an issue if you are picking up a PR from our PR list, because we usually triage our PRs to make sure they're aligned with our project roadmap. But if you start a new PR, like a new feature request, then maybe get some feedback from the core the committers or PPMC members to make sure it's aligned with the project roadmap before you get started making a PR for the issue. The second reason, sometimes we get duplicate PRs for the same issues. So make sure that you are the only person working on it by communicating first on the issue that you're taking this, and then start your PR. Thirdly, it's just some implementation issues. So sometimes the implementation doesn't solve the issue, and then so that's maybe the most common reason. So sometimes we can tweak it to make it work, but sometimes it's just too far off from the solution. So, but we will definitely work with any contributor to try to make that happen. Yeah. So these are I think the most common reasons why a PR might be rejected.
That's really helpful, and certainly everybody, I can easily imagine how stressful it might feel or scary to make your kind of first contribution. Please do not be scared. We're excited to see anything. And as Hezheng mentioned, our goal is to get as much into production as we can and to approve as much as we can. And we're going to help you to make sure that that happens. So if there's something wrong with it, or you're stuck on something, or have questions, or maybe something isn't quite right, we're all super friendly, and we're going to help you make sure it works out. So have no fear, and we're excited to see your work.
Awesome. Thanks, Maxim. And before I pass the mic to Luis for the dashboard walkthrough, lastly, you can, for all the first timers, we have a good first issue label that are usually friendly to newcomers. So here we provide a link here. But it's really easy to find it. It's just you go to our issues, click on the good first issue on top, and then you will see all different kind of good first issues. It might be easier to start with the docs and gradually maybe get to the refactor and eventually to new feature request. Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. All right. So I'm going to pass my mic to Luis for the next part of our community huddle.
Listen, thanks, Zhang. And Luis, welcome. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. So many of you have asked what we can do with DevLake, and we kept saying that DevLake helps to increase the observability of the engineering process. But how? Yeah. So today I'll be introducing the specific use scenarios for DevLake. So after you've got the data from DevOps tools, how can you play with it? And the basic idea is to use Grafana to visualize the data and make all kinds of dashboards. And today I'll be introducing 4 dashboards. Each dashboard was designed for a specific segment of user and scenarios. And each dashboard contains multiple charts presenting engineering metrics that user cares. I only got 10 minutes, so I'll try to introduce as many as possible, and I'll stop at 10 minutes and leave the rest to the next huddle. And Hezheng, can you please, because I unshare the screen? Yeah. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen? All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move to the first first dashboard, which is called GitHub Basic Metrics. And this dashboard is designed for open source project maintainers and to help them know the big picture of GitHub repos. So this dashboard contains 4 parts: user requirements, how issues are handled, and contribution stats, and how PRs are handled. And I'll go through it one by one. So in the first section, user requirements, it shows the number of issues created in the selected time range, which is now default to last 6 months. So in 1.1, you can see there's like there are over 600 issues created, and it's and the count is count over time. Yeah, and we can see that in April and May we had a surge in the new issues because we were trying to publish a big release during April and May, and we did a thorough QA for DevLake, and that's why we got so many issues created. And probably another reason for this is that we had more and more community members in the last 3 months. So this all appears in this charts. Okay, and for the second section, how issues are handled. So after we had a glimpse of the basic idea of the issues, the newly created issues, we want to know that, project maintainers wants to know that how issues are handled and how fast do we respond to those issues. So in 2.1, we can see the number of closed issues in these in the last 6 months, and see the percentage of the percentage of all open and closed issues. And we can see that before May and June, most of the issues are closed, and yeah, which is a good sign. Which means we have like dealt with those old issues. Yeah, and the recently created issues are more likely to be open right now, which is I think, yeah, it's because there might be it takes time for us to deal with it. Yeah. And the 2.3 shows the mean issue lead time in days. The issue lead time means the time from issue creation to issue gets closed. And we can see the mean issue lead time for DevLake is around 2 weeks. which is acceptable because our target is to keep it under 2 weeks. Yeah, we can do better. We can definitely do better. But and in 2.4, we can see this number, this metric over time, and it's getting better and better during the last 6 months. And in 2.5 and 2.6, so after we have looked at all the closed or open issues, we'll shift our attention to the outstanding issues, which means the issues created in a long time ago. And in the 2.6, we can see that the outstanding issues ordered by the queue time, which means the time from issue creation to now. Yeah, and we can see that there are issues which have been created 6 months ago, and which is a bad sign. So after we've found these kinds of issues, we can take a look at this. We can take a look and see if we can close it or plan it in the next milestone. Okay, so after reviewing the issue stats, we'll take a look at the contribution stats. In 3.1, we can, well, it's quite similar to issues. So in 3.1, we can know the number of new pull requests, which is over 500. And it's getting more and more in the last 6 months, hitting the highest point in April. Yeah, and in 3.3, we can divide the PRs by contributors, and we can see the top contributors by merge PRs here. And it seems Warren is our champion in the last 6 months. And we can also see many community contributors here. And thanks to Matrix G, Fatele, and all of you. And yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but there are just too many metrics in this dashboard. I want to make sure that we have time to cover. This is the first one, right? We have other dashboards, so maybe we can. I think people now have a good understanding of what this dashboard is for. Maybe we can walk through other dashboards and how we are using them, or the users who created them are using them. Maybe focusing more on the use cases, and then we can leave the details for the users to explore.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'll brief the last section. So how PRs are handled. So in 4.1 and to 4.4, we focus on the status distribution of PRs. So how many or what percentage of PRs have been handled. And from 4.5 to 4.8, we'll focus on how fast do we handle those PRs. So we have the metrics such as time to merge and time to close, which means the time between a PR gets created and PR gets merged. Okay, I'll jump to the next. That's the first dashboard. And the second one is the weekly community retro. Okay, so it's also a dashboard designed for open source project maintainers. We use this dashboard in our own weekly sync up meeting to get an idea of the community updates in the last week. So in this dashboard, we can see the community contributions the issues created by the community, and how the percentage we would deal with the issues. So now here is 0, which means all the issues have been commented, have been responded. So it is good. And how fast do we respond to community issues? So issues created by community members. And now it's 3 days, which is not good, because we are aiming to do it in 1 day. Yeah. And also the contributions for contributions of the community, and we can see the total number of PR and the PR created by the community and its percentage, and also the merge rate. Now it's 80% and it's fine, and the average time to merge here. Yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, that's the second one is for weekly community retro, and the third one is the weekly bug retro, and we also use it in our weekly sync up meeting to review the bugs found in the previous week. And basically we'll look at how many bugs have we found in the last week, and how many have been fixed, and the lead time to solve those bugs. Also, we'll take a look at the outstanding bugs and the average age of outstanding bugs, and trying to close or put a PR to the long-term outstanding bugs. And you can see here, the longest one is over 3 months. Yeah, and I'll take a look at it later. Yeah, and here the last 3 charts shows the new bugs, closed bugs, and total outstanding bugs by week. So we can see the trend over natural calendar. Yeah, and in the last chart we can see the total outstanding bugs is always around like 15 to 20, and it's quite and it gets more and more in the last 2 weeks, and which means we should spare more time to bug fixing and to lower the stats a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So the last dashboard is the Jenkins Dashboard, which was mainly designed for DevOps engineers, and it contains 4 major metrics: number of builds, so build count, and the build success rate, and the build result distribution, and the mean build duration in minutes. Yeah, and it helps. Apart from those 4 static stats, we also provide a trend view for those 4 metrics. So DevOps engineers can see the metrics changes in natural calendar. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I plan to cover today, and I'll let the mic to Maxim.
Yeah, thanks, Lewis.
Okay.
Yeah, so guys, I think the key takeaway here for you to hopefully really understand is a few things, right? Hopefully this gives you an even better sense of what DevLake can accomplish, right? Where ultimately what Lewis has shown you here is there's this intersection of data coming from sources, like GitHub, like Jira. Certainly those were the kind of heavy focuses today. And this is kind of showing you what you can accomplish when you bring that data together and turn it into a dashboard to create some useful dashboards, useful insights. And as it relates to things like the dashboard bounty program, this is exactly the kind of thing that we're hoping to kind of get ideas from the community on. Certainly where you guys can make a huge, huge impact is if you come up with an idea, right, like, hey, this would be kind of useful for someone to take a look at. If you figure out like what metrics would you include in that, we can work with you if you want to help you develop the SQL queries. But that's ultimately what the beta bounty program is about. Quick summary of what we've done today and key takeaways. So hopefully you guys got a better understanding of how DevLake works. Hezheng is always in the Slack, as am I. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to jump into that if you're still stuck on anything at all. You've also hopefully got a better sense now of how to make your first commit and first contribution to DevLake. And as I mentioned, we're really excited to get as much work merged into the product and into the project as we can possibly do. So don't be scared. We're here to help. And if you get stuck on something or you feel like you're not quite up to where you'd like it to be, just reach out to us and we'll help organize you and get you ready. Lewis showed you guys some of the dashboards. I know there's a lot of detail in there, but I think the key takeaway there is to really be thinking about what kind of workflows could you bring some insights to from DevLake, and what does that look like? To Nikita's point, right, there's a lot of different products out there doing various kinds of monitoring and analytics. That could be one easy way for you to join the bounty program and make a huge impact and make some money for yourself, is take a look at what other products are out there and see how you could replicate their dashboards or their metrics and build it in DevLake. That would certainly be a great example of something for the dashboard bounty program. Last and not least, as you saw, we had 2 of our community members share updates. Certainly one of my goals is definitely to have our community members featured, share news, highlight other projects. So if you ever have anything you think should be shared, or you have something you would like to share yourself, definitely send me a message and we'll make sure you're on the agenda. So as a final reminder before we open up the questions, and then Hezheng, Lewis and I will hang out on the Zoom link for a while longer if you want to chat or ask any questions. A reminder that we're doing these huddles every other week. So we will not see you next week, but we will see you the week after that. I'll of course be reminding everybody in Slack to make sure everyone is there. So with that, we can conclude today's session, at least our official program. And certainly, as I mentioned, we'll hang around on the Zoom for any questions, or if you want to just chat, just shoot a note in the chat and we'll make you a panelist so that you can just chat with us. But thanks everyone for joining. We're excited to keep up the progress. And hopefully on our next session, we'll see even more new contributors and even more new members of this community. So thanks everyone for joining. And it's great as always to have everyone's time and attention. So thank you.
Thank you, Maxim.